Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi says his country killed more than 100 terrorists in hideouts and training centres in airstrikes on Pakistan last week. The Prime Minister was speaking during a televised address for the first time since a weekend ceasefire that ended 4 days of cross-border missile, drone and artillery attacks between India and Pakistan. Mr. Modi said India had only paused its military action and would make no distinction between governments that support terrorism and terrorist groups. Last week's violence killed dozens of people and sent thousands fleeing on both sides. It was the worst fighting between the nuclear rivals for a decade. Well, the Prime Minister said his message was clear.
Certainly, this is not an era of war. But this is also not an era of terrorism. I want to tell the international community, it is our stated policy that if we talk to Pakistan, it will be on the issue of terrorism. If we talk to Pakistan, we will talk about Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
What else did the Prime Minister have to say today?
And let me quote the Prime Minister. At the very beginning, he said, the Pahalgam terror attack was a brutal terror attack. The terrorists killed people based on religion. This was a personal pain for me. After this attack, the entire nation spoke in one voice. He said that at least 100 terrorists were killed in Indian precision strikes, which began in the night from May 6th to May 7th. And he then made the point that it was Pakistan, the Pakistan Director of Military Operations, who on May 10th reached out to India asking for truce. Again, there was no mention of any third-party involvement, especially not of the USA. So, and also looking at the media here, especially the electronic media, the newsrooms were literally turned into war rooms, setting the tone for much of the debate, which was very, and continues to be, very hyper-nationalistic, very jingoistic, I would say.
Do you believe military action can solve problems between India and Pakistan?
Well, I'm afraid in this particular case, we had no choice, I believe, but to react militarily as well as through diplomatic and other means, because we had already exhausted all these other things. You know, you were in a situation right now, ma'am, where we not only have no ambassadors in each other's countries, there's practically no trade, there are practically no visas being exchanged. We did, until this particular crisis erupted, we did permit a lot of Pakistani patients to come for medical treatment in India, but even that's now been dialed down. There's pretty much left to do in terms of conventional diplomatic measures to convey our disapproval of Pakistan's nurturing, financing, equipping, guiding, and dispatching these terrorists. And so finally, something kinetic, a sort of physical military action was unavoidable. And I must say the nation has stood with the government and the armed forces on this. We are not a warmongering nation. In fact, we have never in our history initiated an attack on anybody. But we cannot just keep lying back and taking it.
In Italy, pasta is sacred, made with just 2 ingredients, semolina and water. But Pastificio Futuro has a little something extra. The factory sits outside the Casal del Marmo Juvenile Detention Center in Rome. Here, Pope Francis washed the feet of the young inmates on Holy Thursday. Then, before he died, he gave the factory all the money in his bank account, some 200,000 euros. Its employees are current or former inmates, giving Carmine Gallo a way to return to society.
Pope Francis donated the money to pay for the mortgage here. What difference will that make in your future?
He says he now has a future because of Francis. Food technologist Gianfranco Desideri leads the factory.
I started here for make a good pasta, and then I understand the real purpose of this project. So help these guys to change their life.
You're trying to make good men.
Yes, I'm trying.
As word of France's donation spread, sales of the 10 different pastas got a papal spike. Each bag with the Pope's advice: don't let your hope be stolen. That special ingredient, a final gift from a man who practiced what he preached. Ann Thompson, NBC News, Rome.
As the crow flies, it's just 350 miles from Los Angeles to San Francisco. It's also one of the busiest transit routes in the United States and is well suited to planes, trains, and automobiles. Hang on a second. Planes, trains, what? There are certainly planes shuttling back and forth between LAX and SFO, and taking a car can be one of the classic American road trips. But taking the train is an entirely different story, because you can't. There is no direct train link between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The nearest Amtrak mainline station to San Francisco is across the bay in Oakland. That's partly why, 3 decades ago, authorities in California decided they needed a fast rail link between the 2 biggest urban conurbations in the state. Linking Los Angeles and San Francisco with fast rail would have several economic and environmental advantages. The dream of high-speed rail in the United States is fraught with hurdles.
The first is simply the lack of precedent. There's not really any purpose-built intercity rail in North America. There are some intercity rail services in the Northeast, routes like the Amtrak Northeast Corridor. It's not really high speed. I mean, the journey times are not bad, but it's certainly using, legacy infrastructure, and it's proving quite difficult to modernize. Issue number 2 is you've got to get the trains into the downtown, into the city centre. For the LA end, I think the range of mountains north of LA are a huge cost and engineering complexity. I think the third major hurdle is simply the planning system, the level of environmental clearance you have to build a new railway, the regulatory environment, the sheer number of local administrations you have to go through especially in a democracy like the United States, like California. I think the planning system has been a huge hurdle as well.
Wading through the planning bureaucracy and acquiring the right of way has undoubtedly been one of the major factors in slowing progress.
For that 119 miles, we have had to acquire 2,300 parcels of land. Those are all individual negotiations with the property owners. From there, we have had to move 1,800 utilities out of the way. That's all of the land preparation before you get to construction have certainly been big challenges.
Because of the geography, the route doglegs into the Central Valley out of Los Angeles and back into the Bay Area.
We want to connect places, not bypass them.
When eventually completed, the track will run 500 miles between the main urban conurbations, with a travel time of 2 hours and 40 minutes. About a quarter of the route, 119 miles, is under construction in the Central Valley stretch. Eventually, some US record-breaking engineering will have to be done to link the 2 cities.
Now we're building the Central Valley stretch. We've also helped to electrify the Caltrain corridor here in the Bay Area, but to connect the 2, for example, we have a mountain range to get through. And similarly, to get from the Central Valley to Southern California, there's 2 mountain ranges, and those will require a substantial tunnel section.
Construction of the tunnels has yet to be started. What appears to be a piecemeal project with parts under construction and others still in the planning phase has much to do with how the rail line is being funded, or more particularly, the lack of funding from central government.
When the interstate system was built across the country, the federal government paid for 80 to 90% of it. That's never existed for rail projects, and so I think there's always been this question of what is the right balance between federal and state share. And so for highways, it was 80% federal and 20 or less percent state. We've sort of been doing it the reverse, where right now it's about 25% federal and about 75% state funding.
When it was first imagined, a high-speed rail line was not seen as a commuter link. However, housing prices have skyrocketed over the years, particularly in San Francisco. This means living in the cheaper Central Valley and working in the Bay Area becomes more economically and socially viable. Some Republican critics in the state were calling for the project to be curtailed or even shut down. However, that is probably very short-sighted.
I don't see any sense in giving up. I mean, the construction's underway, and they have got a plan to get a 270-kilometre railway running by the end of the decade.
Even though the completion of the high-speed rail link between Los Angeles and San Francisco is still a long way off, small steps have been made in the Bay Area with the electrification of the existing track. It will be interesting to see if the enthusiasm will be translated into support for the further rounds of funding needed for the project to link California's two major conurbations by high-speed rail finally. So, Californians are in for a long wait to buy a ticket to speed from Los Angeles to San Francisco in the comfort of a train.
I hope people can appreciate that there are these places left in the world and they're special and they need to be preserved and kept.
When I signed up for a backcountry hiking experience during winter on Sable Island, I knew I'd be in for a smorgasbord of nature that would include everything from the famed wild horses running on snow-covered sand dunes to gray seals nursing their pups. I ended up getting everything I bargained for and more, all in the span of a single day's hike around a true Canadian treasure, peeking out through snow-covered sand. The day starts at the Halifax helipad, where you have to zip on a survival suit before getting on the helicopter.
Well, quite chilly out here on the runway in Halifax, but because Sable Island is closer to that Gulf current, it will be warmer when we arrive.
The ride itself from Halifax to the island takes only 1 hour and 5 minutes, with everyone aboard full of anticipation to see that first speck of sand.
All right, here we are, Sable Island.
We're first greeted off the helicopter by Parks Canada. Jordy Mott from Picture Perfect Tours is our tour director. His ancestors were superintendents of the island during World War I, and it's where his great-grandparents first met.
Being actually able to come here and connect with that history and share it with people has been a pretty special thing to do.
Parks Canada asks guests to stay 20 meters away from the horses and the seals. The horses have been here since the 1700s, but are now considered wild. A large die-off was recorded in 2023. 150 of them died out of the highest recorded population size of about 590 horses. They are able to take shelter from wind on the leeward side of the dunes when storms hit, but Hurricane Fiona, which hit in September of 2022, dealt an early blow to the vegetation they rely on to get through the winter.
It senesced a little earlier because it was a little beaten up by the storm. So they had potentially a little less forage that year, and that mixed with the high population and in general a lot of storms that year.
Since then, the horses do look like they're recovering.
I don't have the numbers yet, but I expect an increase. Yeah, quite a few foals this last year, and there was very low mortality just from what we could see between 2023 and 2024.
You'll notice quickly that it's not all about the horses on Sable Island, especially if you visit in the wintertime. It's the world's largest breeding gray seal population, with about 320,000 coming on shore during December and January. Everyone was reminded not to get too close and given a wooden walking stick to use as a decoy.
If they do decide to try to bite something, they have an option other than your ankle.
The pups are referred to as weaners before they molt their white coat to get a little leaner and make their way out to the ocean. The cold doesn't bother them thanks to their thick coat and blubber. After a hike that took us westwards to see otherworldly sights, it was time to head back to the helicopter so we could take off and be back to Halifax before dark.
I hope people take away an appreciation that there are still places with magic left in the world, and that some place like Sable almost shouldn't exist, this little ribbon of sand in the middle of the ocean with wild horses and the seals and the history that spills out of the sand dunes with the shipwrecks and life that happened here for decades and centuries.
Peak season for booking an island visit with Picture Perfect Tours is from June to October, but there are 3 to 6 flights like this one that go out during winter.
We are here crying to you, O God, because we've heard the cries of your people.
We have also read the budget resolution of this Congress, which calls for $1.5 trillion in cuts to life-saving and life-sustaining programs in order to give a tax break to billionaires.
Deliver us, O Lord,
Never.
from the deceptive lie that says our nation will be better off if those who have little get less and those who have too much get more.
Against the conspiracy of cruelty, we plead the power of your mercy. Walk through.
United States Capitol Police.
Somehow.
Right now you're participating in unlawful
Even
demonstrations. If you don't cease and desist the activity, you are subject to arrest.
Keep moving, Lord. Keep changing, Lord.
Warnings have been given. If you do not want to be arrested, you must leave the area. Move outside. That area. That way.
Doesn't matter if you're pressed. Outside, sir. This way. Everybody outside the building.
This is very different. This has never happened before. With the press is being cleared out of the rotunda.
Man, let's go. Keep walking. Police zone. Let's go. It's closed now. Let's go.
Don't keep walking. You'll be arrested. In the rotunda. Right?
Keep walking. Yeah, let's close the door. Keep moving. Keep moving back. Keep moving back.
Is there a reason why you're closing the door? Is there a reason why
It's a police line.
It's a police line?
Yeah. What do you think of that?
So this has never happened before. We're here in the Capitol Rotunda, where even the press was told that we have to push out and away.
All right, guys, we're going. You guys go down there, please.
Down the stairs.
All right. This way. Stop pushing.
You can go to the CDC. You can go
down the stairs, please.
Let's go, folks. Go. Out of the building. Let's go.
They're not allowed in there right now. Press isn't allowed in.
No press is allowed in?
No.
Folks, let's go. Keep moving down the hallway now.
Sir, if you keep doing this, we're going to have to help you, okay? We're active demonstration in there. Told you about 10 times already.
But I'm not actively demonstrating.
You're staying here. We've asked you to leave, so you are part of it.
Four former British Special Forces soldiers recently made headlines after scaling Mount Everest in record time using xenon gas to speed up their acclimatization process. The team, which included Garth Miller, Alistair Carnes, Anthony Stasica and Kev Godlington, completed the ascent in under 5 days, a feat typically requiring several weeks for proper altitude adaptation. Xenon, a noble gas, was used to stimulate the production of red blood cells, theoretically helping the climbers better cope with the low oxygen levels at high altitudes. However, the practice has sparked controversy. Critics argue that this method undermines the essence of mountaineering, with American guide Adrian Ballinger describing it as a stunt and expressing concerns about the ethical implications, likening it to doping in sports. Experts also question the scientific validity of xenon's effects. Studies have shown only transient increases in erythropoietin levels, without evidence of long-term benefits for red blood cell production or performance enhancement. Furthermore, some authorities worry that such expeditions could negatively impact Everest's tourism industry and its reputation, as shorter climbs might diminish the experience of traditional mountaineering. The Bureau Report, NewsX World.
संत क्या करते हैं? The saints, they function like a mirror. What does a mirror do? The mirror does not create us. The mirror only shows our reflection. The mirror only shows what we are. When we see the mirror, we look ourselves in the mirror, we see our reflection, we see our image. In the same way, the spiritual teacher functions like a mirror. He only let us know who we are and what we are. For example, To understand mathematics, we go to a maths teacher. से ही अगर हमें स्पिरिचुअलिटी को सीखना है, अध्यात्म को सीखना है, तो हमें एक स्पिरिचुअल टीचर के पास जाना होगा और उस स्पिरिचुअल टीचर को कहते हैं गुरु। बहुत से लोग कहते हैं गुरु की क्या आवश्यकता है। वैसे तो अपने बच्चों को हम स्कूल में भेजते हैं कि इसको कोई टीचर पढ़ाएगा, गुरु पढ़ाएगा, पर आज फिर भी लोग ये क्वेश्चन करते हैं कि जी गुरु की आवश्यकता क्या है। मैं समझता हूं आप लोग जब ड्राइव करते हैं, कार चलाते हैं, तो कार चलाने वालों के पास एक यंत्र होता है। दे हैव एन इंस्ट्रूमेंट एंड दैट इंस्ट्रूमेंट let them know, it lets them know where to go, और उसको क्या बोलते हैं? जीपीएस। ऐसे ही हमारे संत भी कहते हैं कहां आपको जाना है, ये भी एक स्पिरिचुअल जीपीएस होता है, जिसको कहते हैं गुरु पोजिशनिंग सिस्टम। तो वो जीपीएस बताता है कि आपको कहां जाना है, गुरु महाराज बताते हैं कहां आपको जाना है। तभी कहा बहता था बह जात था लोक वेद के साथ, पैंडे में सतगुरु मिला दीपक दीना हाथ, दीपक दीना हाथ 100 वस्तु दे लखाए, और कोट जन्म का पंथ था पलमय पहुंचा जाए। बड़ा लंबा रास्ता था, पर सदगुरु महाराज ने मुझे पहुंचा दिया। एंड दैट इज व्हाई मास्टर्स हैव कम इनटू द वर्ल्ड। Lord Buddha came, Lord Christ came, Lord Moses came, Muhammad came, Lord Krishna came, Lord Rama came. All these spiritual masters were there to show the path, so that a person can tread on the path. And that path was not of hostility. That path was the path of love. वो प्रेम का रास्ता था, ज्ञान का रास्ता था, समन्वय का रास्ता था। I have this garland with me. This garland has big and small pearls. But what is common? The size, the color of the pearl is different. But what is common to all is that there is one thread. And that one thread goes through every pearl. The pearl may be red, the pearl may be yellow, the pearl may be small, the pearl may be big, but there is one thread that goes through every pearl and holds the garland. In the same way, spirituality is that one thread. And that one thread is within everybody.
When we first walked into these halls, Sikot was a powerful symbol across Latin America. But now, since folks in the US are far more familiar with what's happening here because it has a direct connection. Last time we were here, there were about 80 or so people per cell. I'm looking right now, and it's already 70 who have come out, and they've probably got another 30 plus. So you're talking more than 100 people in some of these cells now. And the director has told me they've increased the prison population because more arrests have taken place within this country.
Built to isolate El Salvador's most dangerous criminals, the Center for Terrorism Confinement, or CECOT, opened in early 2023 as the centerpiece of President Nayib Bukele's anti-gang crackdown.
Buenos días.
Why are there more people here?
El régimen de excepción no finaliza hasta que el último pandillero que está en la calle sea capturado.
He says the state of exception, essentially the state of emergency that's been declared under President Bukele going back 2022, will not end until the last gang member has been taken from the communities and brought here to Sikot. This is a court hearing that's playing out right now. This is a preliminary hearing that's playing out. There's one in there. And this one hasn't yet started. But we can look and see. Anderson Cooper last night was asking me, is everyone in Sacat convicted?
No, no todos. Muchos.
Garcia says many here have been convicted, but others are still going through the judicial process. And when we ask, he does allow us to sit in on what appears to be court hearings underway.
I hear you when you say that there are people who have done horrible things, but is it possible that there are people who are innocent as well in here?
Toda la gente que está acá.
Garcia claims every person in Secot is an active member of a terrorist organization.
And you're confident that that's the case?
That's correct.
Critics have said there's a lack of due process, so it's impossible to say for sure.
Questions have been raised about that severity of treatment, and it is seen certainly as harsh. But when you talk to Salvadorans, they say, yes, perhaps harsh, but totally necessary to have eradicated the gangs and to keep them out. The question is that same level of treatment necessary when it comes to the deportees that are coming here from, say, the U.S.? But if you look just straight down there at the very end, that's Sector 8. That's where the deportees, including those from Tren de Aragua, are being held. We cannot go into that sector. When I ask why, he says it's not part of this approved tour.
I'm Robert Fuller, and this is my wild garden, high up on the Yorkshire Wolds. I'm a wildlife artist and a filmmaker, and I've got over 80 cameras set up in and around my garden. I've spent years creating a whole world for them. I've built dry stone walls for the stoats to hide in, with secret tunnels leading to nesting chambers, and ponds for them to play in. I've created this underground set for badgers. I planted this woodland for wildlife, and just down here, a hare had her leverets. I've built custom-made nest boxes for kestrels and owls, and feeding stations to help them through hard times. Even though I've built all of these habitats for the wildlife, it never seems to be enough for them. They've even taken over our areas of the garden. The climbing frame, the veg patch, my back porch, and even the car park. My Nestbox cameras give me an incredible insight into the life of wild birds. And I've got hides dotted all around the garden to give me a front row seat on all the action. Like these tawny owls, Luna and Bomber, who've become surrogate super parents. Or Gilfie the barn owl, whose daughter stole a chick from a second brood. And then there's Mr. Kez, who learned to feed his chicks when his mate disappeared. I follow these animals 24/7 with a network of cameras. Watching the highs and the lows. Egg laying, hatching, and then fledging. And lending a hand when needed.
happens when a scientific paper goes viral? Well, a few years ago, YouTube sensation Mr. Beast started getting hundreds of messages and comments asking him to plant trees. So he set an obviously unattainable goal of planting 20 million trees, made a catchy video where he helped plant the first 2,000, and against the odds, seemed to have exceeded the goal. He raised over $20 million to do it, but was it worth it? All of this happened because of a viral scientific study. When a team of ecologists, including Tom Crowther, figured out that Earth actually has the capacity to support 1 trillion more trees without disturbing our cities or farmlands, it quickly became a bipartisan call to action. Mr. Beast and a lot of other YouTubers, including science communicator Mark Rober, teamed up to raise over $20 million. He made his own video about planting trees by drone in what looked like industrial timberland, but he did have one of the best explanations of the relationship between CO2 and trees that I've ever seen.
If you have a tree in a big pot, as the tree gets bigger, the soil level doesn't go down at all. The mass comes from thin air.
So over 50% of a tree is made up of actual carbon that's taken right out of the air in a process we call photosynthesis. And it's put into a durable storage in every part of the tree, including the trunk. So planting them should be good for the planet, right? Well, it is, but this is where things get tricky.
Everybody thought that meant planting trees. And that is where things started to go wrong.
A few years ago, Tom went public about his experience on what went wrong with the viral Trillion Tree campaign. But first, let's go back to a few years ago when I went into the forest with a friend of the show, Dr. Bev Law. She measures how much carbon is absorbed and released by forests in a network of stations all over the world.
So what have you found?
Well, we found that this site was a source for about the first 20 years. It's not taking up as much carbon from photosynthesis as is given off by respiration from the soil and the trees.
So it's emitting
and the
more
plants.
carbon
Yeah.
than it's absorbing.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. Timber companies in this region harvest their trees at around 45 years of age, which means forests used for wood products will spend very little time as a carbon sink. The young trees will absorb carbon to grow, but according to Bev's research, it will be a net loss. What about Mr. Beast and his $20 million tree planting campaign? Remember, Mr. Beast and his crew planted at least 2,000 trees in this area, and sadly, this is all that was left. But what went wrong? Why did so many die? Well, old forests are not only good at storing carbon, they're also good at staying alive. During hot summers, their shade keeps the forest floor moist while roots act like sponges. This combination keeps temperatures cooler under the canopy, making the forest much more likely to survive an event like the 2021 heat dome, which pushed nearby temperatures up to a record-breaking 124 degrees, which might have killed Mr. Beast's trees. Still, forests are a crucial part in tackling climate change.
No other industry can do what these forests are doing. It's the most effective and efficient way to store carbon at scale.
So is there a way to have more trees on planet Earth without the vulnerable 20-year period that it takes for young trees to reach maturity? And Bev's research shows that by increasing the harvest interval from around 40 to 45 years to 80 or 90 years, we can increase the carbon storage and still get the wood products that we all use and enjoy. On the surface, tree planting efforts like the Trillion Tree campaign seem like a great step forward in our efforts to decarbonize. But with a little more context, it's easy to see how it's not quite that simple. It seems that the best step forward is to preserve our forests that already serve as vital carbon sinks while working to lower our overall carbon emissions through many of the strategies that we've explored on the show.